I have source code to the game. I can generate a listing file for the game, so I know what every byte in memory does on this game. I am just a consumer and user of the Windows command shell. Didn't make any claims that I was behind it. I worked on the Windows Explorer shell, not the Windows command shell. Yeah, I don't do many sponsored episodes at all. To be fair, if I do my book, that would be first party, not third party, because it's me that wrote it. I get like 50 a day. I'm not kidding. Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. I'm joined as always by my co-host Glenn. How you doing, Glenn?
I am doing well, David.
Good to hear it.
Sorry, Dave. I used your
Dave.
formal name.
Yeah, it was a little more formal. It's true.
I'm only supposed to use that when I'm angry or
I thought we agreed on Mr. Plumber. No.
Not in front of the kids.
What's the big news in the shop this week? Let's see.
Holy
cow.
What?
I got news so big that Elon Musk retweeted it when I posted it. That's how big this news is. So I got my PDP 1134 booting off of the RK05 drives. I got the 1134 running 2.9 BSD Unix, and I formatted a SCSI drive in my PDP 1173, which was the actual question that I was going through. And it's something I have done in the past, but it's actually a really complicated setup where you can't shrink existing partitions and they're wrong. And I won't bore you with the whole story because I talked about it in the episode a bit, but I asked ChatGPT like 3 months ago, and iterating with it, I was able to get to a solution that was kind of cumbersome, but it worked. So it was great. But this time I thought, excuse me, I'll ask Grok because Grok is brand new. And so I took the same question, pasted it into Grok. And the one difference is I gave Grok the source code to the disk label program. So it had a bit of context and knowledge about the program. But it coughed out an answer immediately that was a better answer than ChatGPT, and I got it on its first try without me having to iterate on it. So I was really impressed, and that's what I wound up posting on, and that's probably why it got Elon's attention, I'm guessing. But so that was cool.
It didn't spit it out or belch it out; it coughed it out. Is that?
Yeah, came out. Okay. It waited a while, and then came out really quickly.
That's kind of Grok's way, right? That's how Grok rolls.
I was showing my wife something in Grok today. She'd never seen Grok before, and I typed the question, I hit enter, and then I just hit play on the keypad, and that song Hotai makes it. It's the one that you'd have to look this up. I can't play it because of the copyright stuff, but it's the standard instrumental of people walking down the fog-filled alley, the superheroes. Anyway, it's kind of a cool song, and it's playing as Grok is thinking. And she's watching this, and she's like, is that really the Grok music for when it's thinking? And I'm like, no, but that would be awesome. So I paused it, and then it was like, well, this is not near as half as much fun as when we were thinking it was with the music. But
Grok needs a soundtrack.
It does. Well, it should be Hotai.
It's better with the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It doesn't need one. It's just better with one. Cool.
Now, speaking of AI, that's my latest project. I've been threatening for about a year and a half to learn some AI. So my project is to build an AI that can learn to play Tempest. And because I currently have the world's high score on the game Tempest. So if I can train an AI to beat me at Tempest, I think that's, I don't know if it's newsworthy, but it's certainly interesting. So that's going to be my project. And so I've instrumented Tempest. I managed to, in years past, totally reverse engineer the code base of Tempest. I took the ROMs out of the machine. I read the man, used IDA Pro, rewrote all the code to be relocatable. But if I pound define everything back to zero, it will come up, it'll generate the original game binary. So long story short, I have source code to the game. I can generate a listing file for the game. So I know what every byte in memory does on this game. So I have Lua code that goes and inspects the game in its running state in MAME, pulls out things like what segment is the player in and how many shots does he have on the screen and where are the enemy aliens. So it picks up probably right now about 64 different things, and I'll probably have, say, twice that many, 128, and those will form the parameters that go into a neural network, and the network will then, magic happens, and it trains itself. These are the parts I don't know as well. And then you can ask the model, what's my next move? And it will eventually tell you, well, move left, move right, fire, super zapper, whatever. And it will try things, and then you will score it and tell it each frame what's going on. Like, well, you scored 30 points, that's good, but you died, so that's really bad. It's that kind of thing.
So it will be a machine learning exercise? Yeah. Okay.
Reinforcement learning specifically.
Okay.
Deep Q. Okay. DQN, I believe.
Okay. I'm curious to find out how many iterations it needs to go through and how that progress scales along that.
Yeah, see, there's so many things I don't know, and this is something I just asked Grok, but I haven't looked at the answer yet, is Tempest has an attract mode, so you could let it watch that and maybe use that to train the model initially so it gets some sense of how to play the game, rather than just, I'm going to randomly move left and right and fire and see what happens, right, which is what a model training does. Because even if you run that game uncapped, it runs at about 20 times the original game frame rate. So that's like 600 frames a second. And if you want to get 100,000 frames or 600,000 frames, that's 1,000 of those, 1,000 seconds. That's not an unmanageable amount of time. But if you want millions of frames, it's going to take a long time. So
Right. Wow.
But I really don't know anything about this stuff yet, so I'm just a complete noob in the woods here.
Yeah. And you started that sort of like 2 days ago?
Yesterday afternoon. Okay, got the first. I managed to get it to like deposit coin into the machine. That was my first like woohoo moment.
Yeah.
And then I got it to tell me what the player.
Because that's where the money's at, right?
Yeah. If you can't get the money,
if you
there's
can get
no
that
point
thing to
else.
drop coins for you, you're basically
Free
printing
credits.
Yeah.
And player, whether it was alive or dead, and what segment they were on. So I got that working yesterday, and today I wrote a much more, and now I kind of know what I'm doing. So I wrote a cleaner version that has a player state and an enemy state and a playfield state, level and game state, and it will serialize all those out to a flat list for parameter usage. And that's about as far as I got, but it's got like a whole screen of information that displays as you run the game. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So your life is planned out for the next week and a half at least.
Well, depending how far I want to go, somewhere between 3 days and 3 years. Yeah.
Excellent. You managed to put out a couple of videos on the Garage channel, and it generated 200-300 questions, and we whittled it down to about 70. So we're going to jump in here. Okay. So we're going to start with the new Windows terminal, the Warp piece that you explained. And of course, I'd love to start off with some of the more critical feedback, maybe.
Get them out of the way first.
PGR Vloik. So you're responsible for this absolute crap that is Windows Command Shell? Nothing to be proud of.
No, I am not. I am just a consumer and user of the Windows Command Shell. Didn't make any claims that I was behind it. I worked on the Windows Explorer shell, not the Windows Command shells.
Okay, yeah. Someone else is responsible for that absolute crap.
Well, I mean, remember, we're going to get into this distinction later, but there's two things, right? There's the actual terminal, which is just rendering the text on the screen. And I think that's incredibly well done. I mean, there's certain things I would tweak with the scroll back and copying and pasting and stuff like that. But yeah, and then there's the shell, which had to be backwards compatible with MS-DOS. So you got to kind of throw it a bone for that one.
Yeah. And now we have Drake Richards, and I've seen that name before, and he says he's been a fan for a while, but he's really disappointed in this one. He says, anyone even mildly familiar with different terminals knows that most of these features have been part of a power user standard toolkit for years, but Warp is touting them as some groundbreaking achievement. Why didn't you mention or compare these features to existing solutions, like losing your session if the terminal closes? Why not compare that to existing multiplexers that solve this? And then he says like Tmux or Zellige.
Right. Well, my point was, first of all, we were talking about Windows specifically because this was the new terminal or shell for Windows. And so you're really comparing it against things that come with Windows or other commercial or even open source projects that are available for Windows. And I mean, I used to run the Hamilton C shell back in like 94, and I still like that. But I'm not going to say that, none of these features existed in the Hamilton C shell, nor did I claim any such thing. I said they were new for Windows if you were, using this on Windows. But I guess I should have been more clear that this is also, you can run Tmux on Linux. I don't think there's a Tmux for Windows, but I'm sure there's something that does the equivalent thing. I don't know what that is. And I didn't claim that there was none. And sorry if I implied or made it sound like these were the first people to ever have session history in your console. What I meant was Windows by default doesn't have it, and this does. And that's really all I was claiming.
Okay. And the other thing is before they even approached you'd been using this for a long time on the OS side, right?
Yeah, I use it, and I don't use it all the time. I still use Mac OS Terminal for like if I need a directory of a folder. But if I'm going to do anything of any complicated nature, I've been using Warp for that because you can use the AI and the command completion in order to help you figure out what, Linux is fairly powerful, but some of the commands are pretty terse, and ls-lr I remember. But if you need LSOF, I think was one of the questions in the comments. For port, I can never, is it uppercase P or lowercase p? I don't remember. So it's nice to have, you can go and run the manual pages and all that, but it's nice to have this thing to be able to just do it for you.
Yeah. And again, there's people at different edges of that spectrum in terms of use, so if you're in this stuff all the time, you're going to remember and be familiar with a lot of our commands. So warp might be more helpful for those at the less fluent end or less frequent end. But anyway,
like I can write a really long and mean tar command for BSD Unix. It's like half a screen long because I've done it 10 times or 20 times. But if it comes to how do I find all the files and pipe that through exec and then do some other thing, then I want to help with that because I don't want to get it wrong 10 times first.
Why not? Exactly. Yeah. You don't need to have that committed to memory. Dylan Lorler, other than when you've promoted your book as a sponsor, is this one of your first third-party sponsors on the channel? He's also curious and super excited about Warp. He's been wanting that retro green look you have for some time.
I don't do many sponsored episodes at all. To be fair, if I do my book, that would be first party, not third party, because it's me that wrote it. So what the only times I get like 50 a day, I'm not kidding, 30 of them are totally nonsense promotions that I could do on my channel. But it's like for a lawn chair with a cooler built in or something. And I'm like, come on. Or, and 20 out of those 50 will be tech related, but almost none of them will be things that I think are worth doing an episode about. So I ignore like 99.9% of all the promotional solicitations I get. But if it's a product that I use and like already, then I am bound to, if somebody offers me a sponsorship dollar to do an episode about it, and I already use and like the product, I will probably do an episode. Now, the problem or the conflict that creates is that I only wind up doing episodes on things that I actually already like. And so I seem to be enthusiastic about everything I review that is sponsored, but that's selection bias. Now, who knows what selection bias is? Everybody puts their hand up. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if this is about shilling stuff and making an extra buck, there's plenty of opportunity to do that you're not taking advantage of. That's
just consider yourself lucky that I'm not doing athletic greens or manscaping, so you don't have to sit through a Manscaped parody of shaving your nads in order to listen.
Which is a great segue to PDB-11. No. Yeah. Tidy up the nether region of your old PDP. Yeah. It's no longer, the 70s are over. Get into some grooming. At S4Y. Hi, Dave. Should this video be labeled in YouTube as containing sponsored or promotional content?
Okay, wait. What was in the 70s? No, okay. Yeah, it was labeled. This video was tagged as a sponsored video. Yeah. So you should have got the pop. And you don't get it. Do you get it on like YouTube TV? You do on the desktop and stuff anyway.
I don't pay too much.
Yes, it should, and it is. So and it was,
and you mentioned it pretty much within the first 30 seconds.
And I think it says so in the description. Beyond that, it's undetectable.
M.A. Leach, or maybe it's Ma Leach. I'm not sure. Why does the link to grab Warp contain your YouTube name? Are you being compensated to push this product through some affiliate link?
Yes, fat stacks. Every time a user does it, they back a truck up to my house, and the money pours out the back. No, it's not an affiliate link. That's the answer. It's just so they can track it, right? They sponsored the episode, so they want to know, is it worth it to us to have sponsored it? Then let's see how many installs we get off it. But no, I don't get compensated or paid in any way per install or anything like that. If I did, I would disclaim that. But I mean, I do use Amazon links in the description for sometimes if I do a product. And I think but I don't know if I would say this is an Amazon link and I will be paid. Because if it offends you that somebody else is getting paid and it doesn't come out of your pocket, then don't click on links on the internet, I guess. But
so you said if you were
bad attitude, but
you said if you were, you'd disclaim that. Why does my head think disclaim? You would claim that?
I would explain. I should say would explain that, or well, I guess it's a disclaimer in that you can use this link, but if you do, I might make 1%. So I disclaim that.
Yeah, it's my head's just having, I understand disclaimer, and that makes sense. But when you just say disclaim, it's like not claim.
For you, Glenn, I'd put the little asterisk on there, and then I put some text at the bottom, and you could read it.
Yeah, and it'd be in the shade of black or gray, so it wasn't a color issue then either.
Red on blue, yeah.
That's Skunk Hammer. So you were part of the blue screen team?
Everybody was on the blue screen team when you're writing a brand new operating system. It's amazing how steady and... especially if you're running it like NT351 beta on a name brand machine like a Dell or a Gateway or an HP. It was really incredibly stable because we had tested all that stuff. Now you come along, you start installing third-party drivers on a Northgate or some other. That's not really a third tier back then; they were respected at the time. But on some discount PC, and you're running third-party drivers, and now the machine starts to get sketchy, and you start to blame NT for it, and you get a lot of blue screens. But if you're running NT on a well-defined OEM hardware system without a bunch of third-party drivers, I thought it was even stable long ago, like 20 years ago. So
yeah, nobody gets into that detail when they hit the blue screen. They just blame the big manufacturer, right?
Yeah,
that's
and I would too.
Problem. Yeah, yeah.
It's your name on the box. So.
Matt's win. Yeah, and that's part of what they take for being that player. How did you get that big thing with all the statuses at the beginning of the video?
Big? Oh, that's BTOP. I bet you that's what they mean. So at the intro to the Warp video, I show the Warp terminal running and it's translucent, and I think I'm running BTOP in that particular window. So I assume that's what they mean. Or it could be BPY top, because there's a BPY top and there's a BTOP. One does better coloring, and I forget which. Otherwise, they're very similar. And one requires Python.
And FU 2201. Obtuse? Okay. What in the hell did you call me?
I said you were fat. What? Well, where did I say obtuse? Oh, I said PowerShell was obtuse, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That the commands were obtuse.
I hear that, and the sort of the fat stuff. There was someone years ago I saw, it was maybe in a magazine, had a car that, like a 40s or 50s car that they had chopped and channeled and tubbed or whatever, and the license plate was rotund.
Okay, yeah, or Rubenesque, but wouldn't fit.
Yeah, you're not obtuse, you're not heavy, you're just rotund. Rider on the white horse. Dave, are you AI?
No.
Depends what the A stands for. Artificial or actual? Actually.
Yeah, I was playing around with the 11 Labs voice again the other day, showing it to somebody. Oh, and David was here. And yeah, it's very convincing, but it sounds a lot like me in the regular episodes because that's what it's trained on. So that's the inflection and the speech pattern and everything else. And it's not like I get up, hey, I'm Dave. Kids, it's time for school. Come along. And we'll go. And yeah, it's a different inflection. So.
Yeah, that's Comrade Dave. Dermick, Bash, Dave. Didn't know you were a newbie? Many of us cut our teeth on SH, then the most amazing KSH, then CSH, and finally Bash. Now it's ZSH, but I have not yet switched.
Oh, I'm a noob. Well, I compiled the BSD kernel, including the apps today. So I actually compiled SH on BSD Unix on my PDP 1134 off an RK05 drive. So if that makes me a noob, I'm a noob.
Well, you were a noob. Like
before today.
Ago, before you did,
when he wrote that comment, so. I was just, what? Bash. Total I have no idea what that is.
Oh boy. Fut Buckerson. Isn't Dave's Garage that mechanic guy who always comes up on shorts?
I don't know. I don't think so. Isn't that? Oh, who is that weird British dude? He's got a channel with like 10 million subscribers on it. And all he does is talk about cars. And he's kind of crazy. And the production values are just terrible.
There's a few Dave's Garage guys out there.
Yeah, this one is definitely not called Dave's Garage, the one I'm thinking of.
Okay, yeah.
There are a couple other Dave's Garages, but
and you spit out a few shorts today, I noticed too. Definitely.
Yeah, I played around with a program called CapCut, but then when I saw when they're published, they start with like 2 seconds of blackness or something, and it's like, well, that's a nice thumbnail.
I'm sure we'll be getting some feedback in that.
I lost 11 subscribers.
Excellent. Yeah. No, there'll be 11 comments probably then too from those people.
Probably. Yeah. What the hell is this?
Sete de Erebus. How do I get that task manager showing at 17 seconds into that video?
Well, he didn't know that it had already been asked, but the answer is BTOP.
That's the BTOP one. There you go. BTOP. Yeah. So we still don't know the answer, but it's one of two. Brian Smith 01. Why are you showing it on a Mac?
Because I do all my video production on a Mac, so I do my video editing on a Mac. So if I run Snagit and want to capture something and then drag it and put it into Final Cut, it's much easier to do that on the Mac than it is to run it on the PC, save it to a network share, import the file and all that. If I can just drag and drop it, it's that much easier. So I tend to lean on the Mac, especially if something is going to be equivalent across systems. And with Warp, they told me it was 95%. So I didn't notice any differences.
Yeah. Did they give you access to a copy that had the Windows elements on it as well? Okay, yeah, you did get to goof around with that, because you'd been using it alone for a month. John Urbanic, M3Q.
I hadn't been using it for months, though. I've been using it for months.
No. You'd been using the Mac. OS and Linux. Yeah, the Mac stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so I installed it on Windows, made sure it works, and it did, and then how it worked with the various PowerShell and stuff like that. So.
Okay. John Urbanic, M3Q. Are Windows users really this clueless about features that have been available in Unix shells for literally decades?
No. What's the question?
Well, again,
they're not. This comes back to that same question. The thing is, this feature that I'm showing you today in this product name X is not built into Windows, and therefore you should know about it. I'm not claiming this has never been done before, and there should be massive. I don't think the AI thing has been done, and it's certainly not as well. But command completion and session history, I'm not claiming that those things were invented by Warp. So if I said that, send me a timestamp, because I don't remember saying that. Now I'm getting riled up. Move on to the next question.
Okay. La C64. Oh, that's the French for C64.
La C64.
That la would be feminine, but I don't know. Oh, yeah. So can languages like French, can they still have masculine and feminine? Anyway, that's whole. How are you adding the scan lines? Custom font?
Yes.
And then another person, A Human E, looks amazing, but being closed source for AI featured big red flags. What is that scan line font you have? Looks neat. And another person says, is that terminal you need to log in to use? That's nothing to see here. LOL kick. So what's that font thing? People love that.
Yeah, let me answer the font thing first. The font is called Glass TTY VT220. And because I use a VT220 terminal on all of my real PDPs, when I'm terminaled into them from the desktop, I use a VT220 font. And it happens to look pretty cool, and I got the retro colors going on and stuff like that. So you can find it on GitHub, but if you just Google Glass VT220 font, you'll find it.
Glass TTY?
Yeah, Glass TTY VT220.
VT220. Oh, it looks amazing, but being closed source and AI featured are big red flags for me.
Yeah, so I can't help you there. It's not open source.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for, or you don't.
Nothing to see here, LOL. Is that the terminal you need to log in to use?
No. Their initial versions, though, you did have to have an account with them. I don't know if you had to log into it, but yeah, you probably did, I guess, in order to use it. But they've removed that requirement. You do have to use an account for the cloud and AI, or not the AI, but the cloud features and the sharing features, stuff like that, which makes some sense. But that really freaked people out, which, I mean, it's like, how many websites do I have an account on? I mean, I have an account on Nordstroms.com. I'm not staying up nights going, what are they doing?
Well, with all that data they have of yours,
any data I give to Nordstrom's or Warp, I assume is like public domain pretty much. I'm in the phone book, so I realize some people live more secret than that. But
yeah, and I'm probably quite naive in this, but I'm thinking, okay, so if you're using Warp and you're looking for help with commands and stuff in there, what exactly is it about those commands you're typing that you're worried they're going to find out about?
Yeah, it's like you're trying to run a Unix command, find --name sick porn that no one can ever know about. Yeah, I don't get it. What are you doing on the command line?
Yeah, I'm assuming Warp, because you're running it, doesn't mean that their AI is like scouring your hard drive while you're, using its service on your.
Now, would I want my entire command session history from the last 10 years leaked? No, I wouldn't want that. So I guess that's a valid question. But my understanding is that that's protected. But yeah, I will defer to them and their attorneys for that one.
Yeah, circling back to some previous stuff for your Mad Bone Zero. Oh my God, is that B-Top? I guess
yes,
it must be. That's what he's recognized, or BY Top, as I've learned today. Eric the Cat,
BPY, as in Python. B-Top or B Python Top.
Ah, Python Top. Excellent. Okay. Just that little bit smarter. I can quit now. Eric the Cat. Primes using CMD? I am not worthy. I did write a PowerShell script to generate a Julius set fractal based on input of the C and I values.
That's cool. We do have some PowerShell solutions of the Prime Civ as well, but I'm not a PowerShell guy, so I don't know how to write one. But they are cool if you can do it. They're not very fast, though. I know that. We actually don't run them in the benchmark. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I'm just going to talk over you. We every night Rucker runs the benchmarks on the Storinator, and we can't run the PowerShell and Bash and CMD because they just take too long. to get to 50 million or whatever we do. They're fine for 10,000. So we should run them in a demo class where they do a smaller number or something maybe. But
yeah. Have to contact
fight with the Commodore 64s and PDP 11s.
Yeah, the European office in where's Rutger, Netherlands?
Yes.
No. Yes, there you go.
Yep.
Ronan Malarkey. No 4NT.exe users from back in the day on here. And then he says something that I'm going to mess up, except foo.bat, delete star.bat.
He's talking about one of the coolest commands out there, which I think that 4NT had, and I think Norton's command line prompt had as well, unless they're the same thing or somehow related. But they had an accept command. So you could say you want to delete everything in a folder except glen.doc. You could say accept glen.doc, delete star.star. And so the accept would modify the command that came after it and basically hide those files from that command. And I think it's genius. I don't know how you would do it in a Unix shell, but
that's an excellent command. Oh,
very handy.
Hopefully I never need to use it. Sewer chicken. Anyone still use CYGWin?
Sigwin? Yeah. I don't know the answer to this one because I was just wondering, but like the Linux kernel is just the kernel. So when you get a Linux distribution, all of the commands, everything you use, everything you interact with is not actually, from Linus. It's from the FSF, the Free Software Foundation, and GNU and other places. I don't want to attribute stuff because I don't know who does what, but it's all from other open source organizations that have ported and rewritten the entire command set in such a way that it's portable and can be used by Unix or Linux. Is there a port of all of those commands to Windows that will just run under CMD or PowerShell or Bash or any other shell you want? Or do you always have to be in like GNU Bash or Git Bash or some other weird terminal? I just want to use them in the main terminal and be able to type ls-l and have that work. So let me know in the comments.
I can't answer that.
I'm just quizzing Glenn. I got the light going.
Go to the next question. And we got a few of these. Okay. At least sort of 3 of them. So I'll run. So Bloody Albatross.
Is it about the lamp? No. Sorry.
Oh no, I've got those. Those are coming. Yeah, there's about 3 of those, at least 2. Bloody Albatross. So is warp a terminal or a shell or both? Hang on to that. Fat Slav. Why call it a shell when it's just another terminal? And OASN TET. Is warp a shell or a terminal emulator? I get that Windows World has muddled the distinction for ages, but the difference really matters. My favorite shell on Windows is Bash, courtesy of Sigwin. Everything else seems like a pale shadow by comparison. Even WSL is a janky, incomplete mess compared to the maturity of the Sigwin project that also fixes all the problems you have with CMD and has done so in familiar vocabulary, decades of familiarity, blah, 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 blah. So is it a shell? Is it just another terminal? Is it both?
Well, here's a little insight. I didn't know whether to call it shell or terminal. I didn't know which would be more interesting to people. I thought either was defensible. So I ran a 50-50 thumbnail test. One said new Windows terminal and one said the new Windows shell. And after, 50,000 views or whatever, it was exactly dead even 50.0% on each one. And I'd never seen an exactly even one before. And so at that point, I changed it to terminal because I feel probably a little better about terminal. But here's the defense of shell. Obviously, Bash, the SH, stands for shell. ZSH, the SH stands for shell. SH, the shell start, SH stands for shell. PowerShell, shell stands for shell. So all these things are called shells. So you don't have to have folders, icons. That's a WIMP interface, right? The Windows icon, mouse pointer stuff, as distinct from a command shell. Whether warp is a terminal or a shell, I think if really pressed, I would say it is a terminal emulator. But it does more than that because it doesn't just accept your commands and pass them to a shell. It actually acts, or it interprets or acts on and does suggestions as part of its process. So it seems like it's acting as a shell and a terminal. So that's kind of my hand wavy answer. But if pressed, I'll stick with terminal.
Yeah. So it may be either, neither, and both.
I think it's both,
completely
to be
different.
honest.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're cutting hairs here. Splicing hairs? Splitting hairs. That's what you do. Yeah, 3rd time I got it. KX36. Hey, Copilot. Is this folder a Git repository? And then he's got a Copilot. Run this command. rm-rf.git. Nope, The folder is not a Git repository.
Not anymore. It's not. Yeah. Warp won't do that to you. Any like write commands, you have to actually approve and click on the run button, I believe, next to it, or hit enter or do whatever. So yeah, you don't want to say, hey, Warp, how do I format the hard drive? And then just hit enter a couple times. Probably.
It's not going to let you smoke yourself without confirming.
Right.
Yeah. Matsimo, or Matsim 0. So it's not a new shell. It's a new terminal. Yeah, there he goes. Or did I miss something? No, you didn't miss anything. I just missed putting it in 2 questions earlier with the other one. So that's my bad. Yeah. Daryl Salt, 1445. I've enjoyed the video the most out of all of yours he's watched so far. That's a lot of videos. He especially connects with everything he said up to the 850 mark. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Uh-oh. Where did I anger him at 850?
I've had respected colleagues say I should switch to PowerShell, and despite my respect for their knowledge and experience, I've still struggled on with command.exe. Thank you so much for all this and all the great content. Loving it. P.S. What was that you mentioned about coffee?
Coffee? I don't recall. In the episode, I talked about K-Cups, but...
Oh, maybe that's... Oh, yeah. Oh, that got some response, too. Yeah. You're a horrible person killing the environment, I think, because you use K-Cups, so... Oh,
really?
Yeah.
How do they know what I do with them? I'm not dropping them off bridges or overpasses. Oh, what was that minor annoyance?
So I guess there wasn't a question in there, but... Oh, yeah, something about coffee. I don't know. You mentioned something about coffee, but... Anyway, LS Dowdle. Bash has had persistent command line history with a configurable size and a, what's that, caret R recursive search for so long it seems like it's always had it. Did it? Anyway, you get the point.
Bash stores your command history? What if somebody were to leak that log? Oh my God, that's worse than AI. Oh, I'm upset now. So yeah, probably Bash did, but if it's got a command history that persists across sessions, it's also storing it somewhere, and it's probably not in a secure enclave. So you got to pick your poison. Which do you want? Do you want to not have history or have a history? And again, comes back to the didn't say, but CMD does not do that. So
yeah. Joseph Gaviota at 4 minutes in. Dave, were you really using Bash back then? My early days were all SH, then CSH. He says he didn't really get into Bash until like the late 90s, maybe 2000s.
I don't know. I could be misremembering it. I know in college it was CSH.
Okay.
And TCSH was the other option. I don't remember where I first used Bash. It was on a later BSD, I think, like 4.3, but I'm not even sure that 4.3 BSD has Bash. By 93, I was using the Hamilton C shell, which is, again, the C shell and not Bash.
Okay.
So, yeah,
so
I'd
that's
have to look.
CSH? Is that what the CSH is then?
Yeah,
the C shell?
Yeah,
okay.
So I'd have to check. I could be misdating Bash, but...
Yeah. Okay. Tyler Calevra. Why do I feel like the majority of this can already be done with Bash and Tmux combined? Never mind, the AI is a game changer, but he might check out Ghosty as well.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Ghosty.
Okay.
Not seen that.
It's got an extra T in it.
2 T's.
That makes a difference. Yeah. 2 T's. MD5 IZE. Midsize? I don't know. The shell sounds very groundbreaking, although I'm not sure it will catch on. Do we have to wait 5 minutes for a file list like we do in File Explorer or multi-core 32 gigabyte computer? Or have they revolutionized listing files in a directory as well?
If your machine is taking several minutes to display the contents of a folder, your machine is broken or something is wrong. So I do have one folder that I brought up on my Mac today, and it chewed for a long time. So I bought a hard drive that came with a database, and I copied it to my NAS, and it's like ROM folders for, a bunch of games. And it's just the checksums so that you can go and later put the ROMs there and then find out if the ROMs match and so on. But it's got thousands and thousands and thousands of folders within a folder, and it's super deep. And across the network, it took a lot. I can't speak today. Across the network, it took a very long time.
Is the word you're looking for. Yeah.
No, it's tooked. Yeah. It took a long time.
Yeah, so they're like 1,000 folders deep.
Yeah, more than that. Several, there's got to be 10 or 20,000 folders in that one folder. So,
wow. Nice.
And even on that's Unix, and then, well, it's going through SMB, so that's probably not fair. But.
Yeah. So we got two here again. Nigel Trigger, 44.99, says, is the warp name an OS2 reference? And then Salivating Steve says, why do they call it warp? Do they still have the trademark permission to use the name warp back from the OS2 days?
No, different company. They're not related to IBM. So this has nothing to do with OS2 warp.
Right.
Any more than OS2 warp had anything to do with Paramount Pictures and Star Trek, which also used warp, but used it in the context of speed. Whereas OS2 warp either had to pay or I don't know. I know there was contention over it at the time. I heard arguments that, well, warp is to deform. It is not to be fast. And look at how you can transform your data with warp or something like that. So they had an argument where it was not using the trade term. How these guys are getting around it, I don't know.
Yeah, that's for the lawyers.
They don't make any claims about speed relative to warp. So.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Keita Pillar, doesn't warp phone home every time you open it? Which may be fine for home use, but a major security risk if you're working with anything important.
Yeah, no more than a web browser does, I guess. But
yeah, Copilot
and that's the thing, I guess. It's pretty much inevitable that if you're going to run a cloud connected application or something that requires a login, it's going to hit a web server at some point. So you need to be okay with that or trust the company that's making it. And if you don't know the background, and who knows. I mean, the people that are associated with Warp seem to have good backgrounds, but I don't know anything about them as a company. So do I trust my data with them? And again, I don't think you have to make that call other than you have to trust them at least to know that you logged in and signed in and your machine was on and stuff like that. Got to be comfortable with that. Yeah.
Well, if we don't have things like this coming out, then the IT security guys are all going to be out of work because there's nothing left to protect us from. So we need to
if you don't leak data,
this kind of stuff. Yeah. How do we know anything? Yeah. Someone's got to be leaking something to someone. That's how we get social media. Jan Dahl, can the Teams and share functions be used with private servers to preserve privacy?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
You can't use it against a local LLM either. So.
Oh, okay.
You can't see the source code. It's a closed source proprietary application.
There you go. Igor's LV, where is my comment? In Linux, there's history search with Control and R. Also, you can just arrow up or type history command.
That is true.
There you go.
Any claims to the contrary were foolish of that person. Fortunately, that was not I.
J. Go Matt. Still seems crazy to me to have a terminal that sends your commands or AI queries to the cloud. Lot of trust in these companies. Who verifies that they only use what they say they're using, and is that even little enough?
Well, if they're lying, you're screwed, I guess, right? But then if they're lying, they're malware. And so you've got malware on your PC at that point. So then why speculate? I don't think that's the case. So
stop using it if you're...
Now, again, I think this comes back to what is it setting up? Now, obviously, we thought that my understanding, and I am not their representative, I've not read their legal documents, so please do your own research. But my understanding was that your commands that have to be expanded from AI English text queries are sent up. If you type ls-r and pipe it through something, that and the output are not. So that's my
it knows that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't need to send that up to the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah. JB Lewis says, memorizing PowerShell commands was never the point. That's why the help, at least for the core commands where there has always been some level of quality control, is so powerful. How many Linux full-timers haven't used man on a regular basis? PowerShell is verbs and nouns. If you want get processes, is it really such a stretch that the command is get process? You say you can't remember the parameters? Type a dash and hit control space. There's all your parameters.
But they're so long. Yeah, PowerShell to me is very much like VMS. It's very powerful. It's very verbose. It allows you to do many things. But the command is like typing a bloody novel to the computer when you need to go to use it. Windows, traditional Windows, and Linux and Unix all err on the other side where it's like /1 letter or -1 letter has a huge impact on the outcome of the command. There's maybe trade-offs in between there, but for me, I just always found that it was too cumbersome to type the long command lines that PowerShell require you to get stuff done. So I was copying and pasting, and that's not an effective way of typing commands for me. So, and I'm not saying it can't be done or that you wouldn't get better at it or that it's unusable or any of those things. I just said for me, I found it very verbose and I didn't care for it. So
And I think that's where this thing lands. Again, if it's a tool there for those that find it helpful and need it or want to use it. And if you don't want to use it or don't find it helpful, don't use it. It may not be for you. But just because it's not for you or not for me doesn't mean it's not for someone. And
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things you can only do in PowerShell on a Windows machine. And so it is in some cases indispensable, but that's a different question.
Mike Hoskin, 4328. Hi, Dave. Will Microsoft try and hurt this product like they did with Dr. DOS? Can you give me your take on
crush them.
Can you give me your take on the AARD code?
DR DOS.
Yeah.
So that was the Caldera Ray Nurda product, right? Yeah, the AARD code was a little before my time. So my understanding of it was that it was code that would detect whether or not you were running on legitimate MS-DOS or on a replacement system. And the fact people would say, well, does it matter? Should you even tell the user? Well, if you can tell, then it matters. If you couldn't tell, then it shouldn't matter. But if you can tell the difference from a piece of software that this is real or this is a different DOS, then you can probably advise the user. But they only did it during the beta, as far as I know. They put up a message, didn't stop you from installing, didn't wreck the system, wasn't like MS-DOS isn't done until Lotus 123 won't run. Or do we chant that? No, I don't remember that. The funny part is that, people have these conspiracy theories about making apps not compatible and stuff. And it's like, no, there was so much backwards compatibility and compatibility work on the operating system that it was like, it's incredible the lengths Microsoft went to. And it's something that Mac doesn't do today, right? You get a new Mac and they'll change the processor on you. Now you got a new thing. They'll give you a backwards compatibility shim, but you can't go and take a Mac app from 1982 and run it on a Mac today, I don't think. But you can do it with pretty much any Windows or DOS app and it still works. So different imperatives, different approach. But the AARD stuff, from my understanding, was, a legitimate, like, if this thing crashes, we don't want you to think it was Microsoft. So we're just going to let you know during boot that this is not authentic Microsoft. Something like that.
Yeah. Infinite Wonder. Number wonder. Infinite Wonder. Oh, yeah.
No, there you go.
Hey, small things amuse small minds. What's running on port 8080? Then he's got LSOF-P. grep 8080. Come on, Dave.
-P or -capital P, Glenn. It matters. It matters.
It's a capital P.
Yeah, see, that's why I have to look it up all the time. Stuff like that. Now, PowerShell, you just hit dash and then control something or other, and it'll tell you. But I got to type man.
And that control something or other. What does that command do exactly?
I think it's command completion on PowerShell. But I don't know how to do it. Control tab.
And isn't something or other would be just command SOO, right? They'd shorten it up.
Something or other, yes.
Outside in the PowerShell. In PowerShell, you'd have to type the whole thing out, but whatever. Yeah.
Something dash other.
With the right capitalization. Oh, my God. Yeah. Where was Warp then? Nullsmack. Can Warp be set up to use a local AI that has a ChatGPT-like interface? I think you already said no.
Yeah, to my understanding, no. You can't slap your own model in there.
That's why they have it as a subscription, because it uses their model. Kenny JP23. Hey, Dave.
But, to be clear, I think you can use their model for free, right? At some point.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah. But then the subscription part, so they're not likely to make it something that, here, you can use our tool and connect it to your own model and for free.
No.
Yeah.
But, to be clear, I never paid for Warp, and I've used it for a long time. So.
Yeah. And they're not paying for it for you just because you did a thing.
I'm not stealing it. I've been pirating it for months.
Yeah. Can I do another video? Kenny JP23. Hey, Dave, how far are we from not needing to know terminal commands anymore? Can you see a point where the majority of users just type in plain English what they want to happen and the terminal simply executes the command it interprets?
It can. However, I think there's always going to have to be, for that kind of operation, an approval or a confirmation. And for you to know that this command line that it's just kicked out is safe to run, you kind of got to understand what it's at least doing. So chicken and egg, you could have the system just completely take your word for it on AI and run its prompts and do its things. And maybe we'll get there and that'll be safe. But until we get to that day, I want to see what it's going to do before I let the machine do it. So.
Yeah, and that's a nest of the AI sort of feedback where if you just ChatGPT and tell it in your words what you want it to do, and it interprets them and does it. Is it actually doing what you wanted it to do? Does it understand exactly what you wanted it to do, or is it just doing something that it thinks you wanted it to do based on how you worded it, and you don't even know if it's doing what you wanted it to do?
Yeah, I had really good luck with it. If I was
Right.
if I was really specific, I found that it was very good at coming up with the command line. But maybe not everybody is as crisp. You know, when I search on Google, I like to think I'm pretty good. I know the Google syntax and the grammar. I can get good results. Other people may not have the same mileage. So maybe if you're a less sophisticated user with Warp, you'll type in ambiguous commands and get less useful results. I don't know the answer to that. But
Or be less, you'll lack the specificity in your command to actually do it right, and could get yourself into some trouble. And then you blame the computer. But okay.
all right.
Let's jump in here. Mike Koss. All the command line editing tools you mentioned seem to be standard on Ubuntu for decades. Have you ever used that before?
Ubuntu? No, never heard of it. What is it?
Yeah. Yes, says, I believe every Linux saves your command history in a file, at least some number of lines depending on your configuration, if you need to go back and see what your history has been.
Or if anybody else needs to go back and see what your history has been.
Oh, you scared me.
So yes, it does that. It does do that. I agree.
Okay. CPU UK. I think he's a computer guy from England. Or, well, some part of Great Britain.
Probably.
Dave, what about a talk about the original alternative command shell, 4DOS?
4DOS. I used 4DOS for quite a while, actually. I liked it a lot. It's been a long time. That was in the 90s, though.
Ooh.
That was a DOS shell that I used on DOS. It was made for DOS, believe it or not.
That's at university or?
Both that era, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So what about that?
By the time I got to Microsoft, that's when I switched to the Hamilton C shell around 93, 94, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Which is still available.
4DOS. No, the Hamilton.
No, for Windows and OS 2.
Holy jeez.
Started on OS 2, I believe.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's where. Not Warp OS 2?
Nope. Okay. That was later.
LGR FBS. Lurger Fribus. Thanks for a good video. I heard a rumor somewhere that the reason Windows got the taskbar was because American people didn't know how to use the Alt-Tab key combination. Can this really be true?
I don't think so. It's certainly not limited to Americans, I'm sure. But no, I mean, Alt-Tab, you always had some mechanism on the Windows 3.1 desktop other than Alt-Tab to get to a, or did you? I mean, you could minimize an app and it would go to an icon at the bottom, right? And then you could click on the icon, it would come back. So there was always a mouse-based way to do it. It just made a lot more sense, I think, in the Windows 95 taskbar than the Windows 3.1. So
okay, and now we're gonna sort of the end of this time warp. Let's do the end of the Windows terminal shell warp thing. So we get some of the funky questions here. Scott Krebs, beautiful job on the car. Do you catch much grief for sporting Chevy wheels on your Pontiac?
Let me explain. Those aren't Chevy wheels. Pontiac wheels. So the car was built in Canada. And in Canada, They used a corporate drivetrain, which meant that the mechanicals were GM, the bodywork was Pontiac, the dashboard was Pontiac, the interior was General GM. So just like if you bought, say, a 2000 Firebird and a Camaro, how they shared powertrain and chassis and a whole bunch of interior parts and everything else, that's how in Canada, the Pontiac and the Impala were. So the Impala and the Laurentian, which is what my car was born as, are mechanically the same car. And it's only in styling and interior appointments that they differ. So the wheel is actually a 1967 Corvette wheel, and the center cap is completely bespoke to Canada and incredibly rare. So if you notice, it's got center rings and it doesn't have the bow tie or any of the sombrero hats or the stuff. So it's a 67 Corvette rally dish with a custom Pontiac Canada ornament. So
yeah, Pontiac Canada. That's the It's
I didn't want to get worked up, but they're not Chevy wheels, man.
Yeah, I know. But if you don't have that Canadian expertise and knowledge of how the Canadian cars varied in those subtle ways, yeah, people think it's an error.
But I even appreciate people that have that level of knowledge, because as a car guy, I'll take that car out and people come up to the gas station and be like, oh, my dad had a car just like this, except it was a Ford four-door. There was nothing like this. What are you talking about? So.
Yeah. The wheels are not a bug; it's a feature. Super Bernala, where can I get? Oh, we got a couple here. Here's where the lamp questions come. So we got Super Bernala, Joe Burke, 9332, and Simon Fox. Where can I get that Helix lamp? It's gorgeous. What is that helical lamp in the background? I kind of want that. I know this is completely off topic, but where in the world did you get that LED lamp in the back? This thing comes up all the time. So
I know. Here's my problem. They don't make it.
Yeah, Dave has to make it. And yeah.
Well, yeah, and I only have one left. There's a tall box here somewhere behind me. I think it's out of screen, but with a spare one, and that's the only other one I could find. So I don't want to do an episode on how to make them and say, oh, but you can't.
Oh, you can't even get those anymore then?
Not that particular model. Now, I think you could probably do it with any spiral lamp. So I could probably do it, but then I got to say, and your mileage may vary because your lamp might be different. And so I kind of like to be able to show how to do it, but I'm still going to wind up having to do it because everybody asks about the lamps.
Or talk to Rob and get him to do the 3D printer plot for it, and then you can print your own helixes, and then it's a whole other... It gets a lot of attention. It's a pretty neat feature. Corvus Foxen. Hi, Dave. Another great video. Got an unrelated question for you. Oh, yeah. Where'd you get that LED flame helix lamp? Okay, Max Relax. Does this still run on my 286? Or am I stuck with DOS 6.22?
Stuck with? That's a life of luxury. 6.22 is the best DOS. Or actually, 6.22 is the one I worked on. 2.2 came after, but...
That's a Monty Python skit, right? Oh, you lived in a shoebox. Luxury. When I was a kid. Yeah, I think they did that live once on stage. It was pretty funny. John P. Is this worth running for WSL2?
It should. It should work fine.
Okay.
Now, I've never tried it. I should have tried it under WSL2, but I didn't. Because there is a Linux version, so I just ran the Windows version on Windows, but I could have run the Linux version on WSL2 on Windows, and I did not try that.
And yeah, we'll leave that for him. Okay, moving on to the build and run your own kernel. William Grebnick. They still haven't figured out you're still using their Threadripper. Awesome.
Yeah, they caught up with me and they demanded it back. They went back 2 weeks ago. So Dell got their Threadripper back and they got their big Xeon server back. And so maybe Dell will be nice and we'll get a new machine in the near future.
But you remembered you put the extra RAM in, so you pulled that out. So they didn't get your RAM.
Yeah, at the last minute, I had the wrong video card in there, and I had a bunch of I had 256 gig of my own RAM in the machine that I was just going to give them for free, and so I pulled that all out at the last minute. But I couldn't find. Here's the thing that freaked me out. I was sure I had these cards backwards, and so I emailed the guy from Dell, and I'm like, "Please give me the inventory of what was in each machine, and I'll make sure it comes back identical." So I did that, but then it's got the 6 power. Well, the big NVIDIA card has that 12, the new 12 pin. But the chassis just had the 6-pin ones. And I'm like, but it doesn't plug in. And so I couldn't even plug the video card back in. So unless there was an adapter that I misplaced at some point, but so it's still kind of a bit of a mystery. I hope I find out.
So it went back with the video card unplugged?
Not plugged in. Yeah.
Their tech guys will figure it out. Ivan Maglika. Hi, Dave. What hypervisor are you running on that Threadripper? By the way, this must be the most compact and useful video to make smallest custom Linux distro. He likes that.
The Threadripper is running hypervisor from Microsoft, so Hyper-V. And on the Storinator, I run Proxmox because I wanted to do device pass-through. But on the hypervisor for Windows, I didn't care about passing the GPU through to Linux, which you require like Windows Server for, I think, or Windows Enterprise, some bigger license of Windows than I have. So my Windows won't do it, but it doesn't matter. I'm just using it as computation. I telnet in, I build the kernel, I do stuff like that. Telnet, SSH in.
And FSH in?
SSH, secure
SSH.
shell.
Okay. This thing. Gedgy Cat. Great video, but I'm guessing it's more of an intensive process on the PDP-11?
Building the kernel, yeah, it's a lot more manual work. But, surprisingly, well, on BSD, it takes about 35 minutes on 1173 to compile the kernel. On 1134, it takes about 30 minutes, but the kernel is like a quarter the size, but the machine is quite a bit slower. I didn't know how much slower the 1134 was than the 1173 until I started using the 1134 for some of the same tasks that I'm used to doing on the 1173. I'm like, did it crash? Did it hang? What's going on?
So it takes about the same time, but it's a quarter the size.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or it looks to be.
Yeah.
That's a
Leechmaster. Can you please explain your environment? Mac OS on a Threadripper using Linux commands? Did you SSH into a virtual Linux machine on another computer?
Yeah, I either did one of two things. I either SSH'd into the VM UB tripper, which is what I think I did, or I used warp, and it is able to apply the warp shell to subshells. So you can go into another machine, and then that shell will also get warpified. So it was one of those two things. I'm not sure which, but it's just going into the VM. The machine sits down there. It's got one of those new Jet KVMs if I need to administer it. But yeah,
Jet
otherwise
KVM?
I'm just...
Is that
that's
that
a little box.
Yeah.
It's got HDMI port and a USB port. You plug them both into the PC and a network card, and then you can control it like it has IPMI. And it works pretty well.
That's a great little device, eh?
Yeah, I could do an episode on it. It's just like, it seems like a short episode.
Yeah. A couple of shorts. Bastet Furry, NT kernel next?
No, you don't get to compile the NT kernel. That is a closed source proprietary product. I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the kernel. No.
That's right. Milk It. Is this a world record Linux kernel build time?
Close. No, it's 21 seconds. I think the world record is 19.
Really?
No, I'm not talking about guys that overclock their things with nitrogen and all that. I just mean boxes you can buy and turn on and run. The fastest I've ever seen is a dual epic, which was 128 cores versus my 96. Or maybe it was 256 cores. Maybe it was dual 128s. But it was 19 seconds anyway. So a little faster.
That's fast enough, eh? Bill R, 8276. Why rebuild the kernel? To add new functionality? To remove functionality? Size? Says he's been using Linux on and off since the 90s, as has heard of and now seen this process, but still doesn't know why someone would do it.
Yeah, it's not something you generally need to do a whole lot. I've done it to get a real-time kernel, stuff like that. You can turn on some real-time features in the kernel. You have to go in and you type make menu config. And I think I showed this. You get a menuing system where you can go through and turn off and on options. No, I didn't show it. I think I just did it and I turned off the cryptographic options, but I didn't show the steps. So there is a menuing system where you can go in and pick options for the kernel. You can totally configure it, what device drivers. And probably the most common case is, let's say you want to debug something like a device driver. Well, the first thing you're going to do is go into the kernel configuration and turn off kernel address randomization, where it puts the kernel at a random place in memory, which makes it harder to hack. It's a good feature. But your source code and your symbols no longer line up with where it is in memory. So it makes debugging a lot harder. So if you turn that off, that's an example of why you would build your own kernel, so you can debug it more easily.
Neat. Now the next one here, his username is completely in Cyrillic. So I did a little Russian to English translation, and I believe his name may be Adar Kabarov.
Bob.
And he says, how about build Windows kernel? Or I missed something. Thank you for great video.
Don't provoke me. No.
So
Windows kernel? Yeah, no, we can't build a Windows kernel. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's proprietary stuff. Yeah. What's that one? We Germans are peaceful people.
We are not the warlike people, but we can only take so much.
That's right.
It's from The Simpsons.
We can't find that video clip either, but all the other little German ones they had there in. But
yeah, it's from when the Germans buy the power plant. I'm pretty sure, but I didn't watch the whole episode.
Every other part of that episode, you can find the YouTube clips, but not that one specific piece. So that's fine. It'll show up. Ron John 63. Dave, in a prime sieve. Now we're into. Sorry, we're out of the building. Run your own kernel. Run to our last episode of Shop Talk. So now they're going to get much more random. Dave, in a prime sieve, how can we represent a prime that's larger than a 64-bit double floating point value of 2 to the 1024th?
Well, you see, in a prime sieve, you have to have one bucket in the sieve for every number. And since that's more than the atoms in the universe, you're going to have a hard time getting enough chips to do it. So in a sieve, you cannot. If you were doing a different prime approach where you're doing, I don't know, there's ways to predict whether a number is going to be prime or not. There's formulas. It's beyond me, the math at least. Maybe then you're running it on really large primes, trying to factor, 128-bit primes. But for a sieve, which has to start at 0 and have a slot for every at least odd number, or number not on the wheel if you're doing a wheel algorithm, either way, you need lots of slots, and you can't have more than 10 to 100 of them.
There ain't that much sand on the beach.
That's right.
Yeah. Zero Frag. What are the advantages to doing this opposed to sticking to the default kernel?
That goes back to,
I flipped. I got that one question out of order there. These next few. Yeah. Sorry.
No problem.
So what are the advantages of doing that as opposed to sticking to the default kernel? Again, like you talked about, if you're debugging stuff or whatever you want to keep.
Yeah, if you need
stuff in
particular
there.
features turned off or on, or you want to debug the kernel.
And Neil's wrote sort of the same thing. Not sure what the purpose or value was of this exercise. Still fun to see. So thanks.
There you go.
Again. And then Fusion Guy. Dave, what keyboard do you use? I'm in need of a new one and like the sound of the keys on yours. And I've asked you this 3 times myself. I'm shopping for a new one, but
yeah, I use a Corsair K70, but it's the fancier K70. So the K70 Plus Extreme Turbo 3D, whatever that is. And it's got Cherry MX blue switches, although the current ones seem to have brown. My favorite keyboard, though, is the DOS Keyboard Professional. I use this one out here in the shop, the K70, because it's got RGB, and I have all this other RGB stuff going on, so it kind of fits in. But in my interior office, which is far more sedate, I just use a DOS keyboard. I like that one.
I'm going to go use a DOS keyboard.
Just.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting down to the last few questions here. Moonfox, since there was no internet, what did you use to email them at Microsoft? Trying to remember, I think I used Juno, maybe even did it through FidoNet prior to that.
When I came into 93, I was running very early on. I think it was Whizmail on Miss Piggy, which was 1170.
Miss Piggy?
Yeah, it was Kermit, I think, and Miss Piggy.
Oh, right.
And but it was switched really quickly for me to MS Mail. And then every day we would have to download the address book. And at this point, there were 10,000 employees. And by the time we got off and onto Outlook, there were 50,000 employees. And you had to download this address book. But that's okay. So did everybody else. So it was like a huge congestion and network. And we're only on 10 megabit or maybe 100 megabit. So
yeah. How long would it take to download the address book?
Hour. On some days, yeah.
So your first hour is just getting.
Yeah, you can't use your mail until it's done. That's the crappy part. So that's why they moved this eventually.
Yeah, time well wasted. Jack C08. But if you turn on a light at the speed of light, the light will appear normal to you and also be at the speed of light. That was running through my head. It's like, well, it's like if it's already going the speed of light.
You can't do anything if you're already at the speed of light. Your time is frozen at that point. So
yeah.
The only way you can do anything is if you're slightly at least under the speed of light, and then you've got that little room to play with.
Yeah, that's the
And your time gets
couple of videos. I think Red Bull's done a couple of things where they've got a guy on a train track, whatever, going 80 miles an hour, and they shoot him off the back of it at 80 miles an hour, and he just drops.
Falls.
Or he does he's doing some bike trick, and he's going the same speed as the thing, so it's like he's static. And that principle is what I also tried to apply to the speed of light thing. The problem is that only works up to the speed of light.
Right.
Once you achieve the speed of light, it all stops. Yeah. Okay.
Well, here's one thing that was kind of one thing that was kind of an epiphany for me one day is if you think of it as a 2D graph, right? You can either have time this way or speed this way, and you're going to be going 1 in some direction. And normally when you're sitting still, you're going 1 in the time direction. Or if you're going 1 in the speed direction, now you're not going anywhere in the time direction. But normally you're in some mix depending on your velocity. But normally you're really, really close to the I am not moving axis. But the closer you get to the I'm going to the speed of light axis, your movement axis gets to 0.
Yeah. Okay.
One or the other.
William Sudbrink. You got to decide. Make your choice. One or the other.
Of what?
William Sudbrink. If this
light.
is where we can is this where we can submit questions? Question mark. Yep. I have one. When writing C applications for Windows, when would C++ start to give benefit? Seems like everything can be done in C. I guess maybe if you needed dozens of windows to be encapsulated, just to guess.
Yeah, anything can be done in C. In fact, the original C++ front end was just a converter into C. So you could create an object and create vtables and create function pointer lists and do that all on your own in C if you wanted to. So there's absolutely nothing that you can't do in C that you could theory do in C++. But that's also true of assembly language or machine language if you want to get reductionist about it. So when does C++ start to become helpful? It's when you start to aggregate functionality that applies to a block of data. So I've got an employee object that I'm going to assign. Here's all the functions that go with the employee object, package them up with the object and keep them separate. So now my code to set an employee ID can't be called on a warehouse box. It doesn't just exist out in global scope. It's only available when you're talking about an employee object and have one available. So that's kind of my biggest first step to C++.
That makes sense. Connecticut Aggie. Again, we've had questions from them before. What do you think of Process Explorer?
Process Explorer, cool app if you need it. Task Manager does what you need 99% of the time, but for that 1% when you're trying to debug something really obscure and you need a lot more in-depth kind of process information about stuff that Process Explorer shows that Task Manager doesn't, that's when you need it. It's just pretty infrequent. So good app when you need it. Indispensable when you need it.
There you go. TXK Flyer. Why are the slashes forward and backward in MS-DOS not the same? Always having to use Alt-92 since I had an Icelandic keyboard layout was a pain. Why didn't we just use forward slash?
This is a question for Mark Z if I ever get him to come and do the interview. But I believe the reason is that DOS had options before it had paths. So before there were subfolders, you could run like fdisk, and fdisk had some option like /mbr. It probably wasn't that, but I think it was fdisk. But some command or two commands had options that were forward slash. So to disambiguate that, they said, well, we'll use backward slash for paths. Okay. And that's my understanding of how that started.
Yeah. But we'll get Mark Z in to confirm that.
Yeah.
Confirm or deny. He'll have to do one or the other. He can't do neither. Chris Simpson. Why do hard drive manufacturers use a base 10 system to calculate drive size while Windows and other OSs use a base 2? So it's gigabytes versus, what's GIB?
Gigabytes. So the difference is if you have 40 billion bytes, that's not 40 gigabytes, because gigabytes, in my mind, is a power of 2. Doesn't round to a number power of 10. So for marketing purposes, they would have a drive that had 40 million bytes, but that's really only 36 megabytes. So, but you can call it 40 million bytes, which is also true, and that sounds better. So they went to 40M for 40 million bytes when everybody else was still using M for megabytes. Now it's much more common to use M for megabytes, which means millions of bytes. But I'm still a power of 2 guy myself. So,
okay, there you go. Yeah, he says, why can't they just be friends and use the same measurements? I don't want to lose 7% of my drive.
Yeah, it's marketing. It's all marketing.
Yeah. Lies, and statistics. Michael Flood, is it true that Task Manager is being rewritten to make it better? And are you being consulted? Should you be consulted?
Better? No, I don't know. Yeah. Could be. I saw the guy who's working on it at the airport. He didn't say anything, but, it could be secret. So.
What?
So the guy sitting behind me on the airplane when I was coming back from Scottsdale, I don't want to out him because I don't know if his role is public, but he was the guy that currently works on Task Manager. And we've talked by email and stuff because he gave me the source code or helped me get the source code of the XP version and stuff.
Okay.
So I know him from email and stuff. I didn't work with him, but he works on Task Manager now. And he wound up sitting on the airplane seat right behind me. So he was like, all Task Manager, and I'll.
Yeah, nice. Add 5MQ. How about a Halloween episode in October called Dave's Little Shop of Hardwares?
Yeah, the first year we had the Dave's Shop of Horrors, and it didn't go good. Wrong horrors.
Yeah. Yeah, you spelt it wrong on the advertisement. Yeah. Moron, A17. Question for Dave. Ooh, thank God it's not a question for me. I first noticed about 32 minutes plus or minus 15 seconds, then about 41:20 plus or minus, a wear a screwdriver you are waving about in your right hand, not your left hand. What driver set does that come from, and were you actually working on something physical on the side, or was it just something to keep your hands busy?
No, I've got the Vera, if you prefer the original German.
Yeah.
And it's like a roller, and it unrolls, and it has about 20 of the little machine screwdrivers in. So it's their precision screwdriver set. And I love it a great deal. I don't like having to fight with bits. I don't want to change things. I just unroll this thing, and you know what? Let me grab it. So this is it. And then there's all your bits. And, it puts away really easy and nice and handy and tidy. If I remember, I'll put a link in the video description. It'll be an affiliate link where I get fat stacks every time you click on it, just to be clear.
And you got the Vera ratchet drivers too, which are
I've got a little metric socket set because most of my tools are bigger, made for working on cars. I do have metric and imperial, but even my metric stuff is like half-inch breaker bar. So when I'm working on computers, it's handy.
Okay, and the last question of this episode goes to Brent Adams. Does Dave ever curse and swear? I've never met a developer that hasn't verbally abused their IDE or console window.
Yeah, I have, and I do. Although I was even nervous about saying Little Shop of Horrors because I thought that was distasteful. So try not to curse in my show. It bugs me when people do. I think there's the redhead guy on Linus Tech Tips. Jake, maybe? Yeah, this dude's foul mouth, man. He shocks me sometimes. I'll be watching the show. I'm like, come on, kids, gather around. And he'll be dropping God's name in vain and F-bombs and everything else. That's just kind of weird for a Canadian. But so I try not to, at least not during the episodes. If I have too many of these no-name beer, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I have heard a curse word come out of Dave's mouth, but not in a mean-spirited way. And and there's usually an apology after. Oh, shit, sorry. Oh, shit, sorry. My beer? There I go. No, tell me about your fancy beer label.
So I've been drinking this beer, quality beer that I enjoy a great deal, on the show for free for weeks. And I realized, why should I do that? I'll write to Budweiser, who owns distribution of that beer, and maybe they'll partner with me and sponsor Shop Talk. And they said, no, we're not looking for any sponsorships at this time. Thank you. Go away. So now I'm blacking their beer out.
Pulled out the black tape. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's effort. That's a lot of questions we threw at you today, Dave.
Yeah, it was a long one. Let's hope it holds up. Hope they're all interesting, or at least most of them.
Hopefully there's something in there for a few folks. But that's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us out here in the shop today, and I hope to see you next time. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because most people will not be that see this. I would appreciate it if you take the moment to do so. Thanks, and hope to see you next time. Good night. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.